The sun was setting over the dusty roads of a small town just outside Los Angeles. The air was thick with the sound of revving engines as a group of bikers pulled into a gas station, their leather jackets gleaming under the neon lights of the convenience store sign. They were a rough-looking bunch. Tattoos, beards, and an unmistakable aura of dominance wherever they went. Among them was their leader, Snake, a burly man with a gruff voice and a cruel streak. He hopped off his bike, cracked his knuckles, and walked toward the store. The other bikers followed, their boots crunching against the gravel. Inside the store, a young black boy named Jamal stood nervously at the counter. He was about 13 years old, wearing a worn-out hoodie and sneakers that had seen better days. He was counting coins in his palm, trying to pay for a bottle of water and a bag of chips. The cashier, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, sighed impatiently. "Kid, you're short 20 cents? You got any more money?" Jamal's heart sank. He had checked his pockets twice before walking into the store. He knew he didn't have any more. He looked up at the cashier, his lips parting as if he was about to say something, but before he could, a loud chuckle echoed through the store. Snake and his crew had walked in and were watching the boy with amused expressions. "Ain't got enough, huh?" Snake said, stepping closer. "Maybe you should have thought about that before coming in here, kid." Jamal's cheeks burned. He could feel the biker's eyes on him, sizing him up, mocking him without a second thought. One of the other bikers, a tall, wiry man with a snake tattoo on his neck, snatched the bottle of water from the counter. "Looks like you don't need this anymore," he sneered, twisting off the cap and taking a sip before pouring some onto the floor. Jamal clenched his fists, but he knew better than to pick a fight he couldn't win. The bikers burst into laughter, their voices filling the small store like a thunderstorm. The cashier said nothing. Whether out of fear or indifference, Jamal couldn't tell. He wanted to disappear, to walk out and never come back. What none of them realized was that someone had been watching from outside the store. A tall figure leaned against a sleek black car, eyes hidden behind dark shades, his expression unreadable. Snoop Dogg had been in town visiting an old friend, and he had stopped by the gas station to grab a drink before heading out. But now, he had found something much more important demanding his attention. Snoop adjusted his sunglasses and exhaled, shaking his head. He had seen enough. He pushed himself off the car and strolled toward the store, the soft jingle of the entrance bell announcing his arrival. The laughter inside the store died down as the bikers turned their heads. Even the cashier's eyes widened. Everyone in that room knew exactly who had just walked in. Snoop Dogg was a legend, a figure of respect, power, and cool composure. He didn't need to raise his voice or throw a punch to command attention. He simply had to be there. And right now, he was there for Jamal. Snake's smirk wavered. "Yo, Snoop, man, we were just joking around. No harm done, right?" Snoop ignored him. He stepped forward, looking down at Jamal, who was still standing at the counter, his eyes darting between the bikers and the rap icon before him. "You good, lil' homie?" Snoop asked, his voice calm but firm. Jamal swallowed hard and nodded. He didn't trust his voice not to shake. Snoop reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill and handed it to the cashier. "Let the young king get whatever he wants. Keep the change." The cashier quickly nodded, ringing up the purchase and sliding the bag across the counter. Jamal hesitated for a moment before taking it. "The thank you," he stammered, barely believing what was happening. Snoop patted him on the shoulder. "Stay strong, nephew." Then he turned his gaze to the bikers. His usual laid-back demeanor was still there, but there was a steel edge to his voice. "Now, as for y'all..." He took a slow step forward, and suddenly, the group of rough, hardened bikers didn't seem so tough. "Messing with a kid like that? That ain't cool." Snake shifted uncomfortably. "Like I said, man, just a joke." Snoop chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "A joke, huh? Let me tell you something. Where I come from, we don't joke like that. We lift each other up. We don't tear each other down, especially not a young blood trying to get his hustle on." The bikers didn't have a response. The silence stretched. Then Snoop smiled, that easy, confident smile he was known for. "Now I suggest y'all take this as a lesson and move along." Snake exhaled sharply, looked at his crew, and jerked his head toward the door. One by one, the bikers filed out, the bravado stripped from their steps. They climbed onto their bikes and rode off into the night, their engines roaring but their spirits clearly deflated. Jamal watched them go, his heart still pounding. Then he turned to Snoop, who gave him a nod. "Keep your head up, kid. You got a future ahead of you. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise." Jamal nodded, gripping his bag tightly. "I won't." Snoop gave him one last look before strolling back to his car, sliding inside, and driving off into the night. That night, Jamal walked home with more than just a bag of chips and a bottle of water. He walked home with a story, a moment he would never forget. And in the years to come, whenever he faced hardship, he would remember the day a legend had his back, and it would remind him to stand tall, no matter what. Because sometimes, all it took was one person to remind you that you were worth something. And on that day, that person had been Snoop Dogg.